Good morning, my name is Chris Nicholas. I'm the Vice President of the ELPO. Today we are going to go over the process of building a hospital plate that has leverage reduction in. We are going to use a Blenkinsop. We have a plate of aluminum. And these are going to be the two main components that we're going to use for building the hospital plate that has leverage reduction built into it. And then these are the tools on the table that we're going to use to build it. So we've got, these are machine screws. They're not a bolt. So we'll be able to countersink them and have them flush. And these are 1/4 inch. They're going to be the coarse thread, not the fine thread. We have a tap that's for 1/4 inch. We have a drill bit that is a little bit larger to drill a hole in our hospital plate so our screws can fit through it. We have a larger countersink bit. This is a 5/8, it's not a 1/2 inch. We have a drill bit gauge, some markers. This is called a transfer punch, and we'll go over that a little bit more on how to either make one and use them. This is a simple hand tool for drilling, for tapping after we've drilled our holes. Tape measure or dividers, really handy to have cutting fluid for aluminum or steel when you're drilling and tapping. An impact, a drill, and a jigsaw. So a benefit of a hospital plate is that it allows us to mitigate the foot and put a protective covering over the shoe that can be accessed daily or weekly. There's multiple ways of doing that. We're going to show you a simple way today of making a leverage reduction hospital plate. Before you do anything, you want to have your shoe shaped. And the reason for that is if you need to go back and tune up your shoe, you risk damaging your holes and also what you have drilled and tapped. So you want to have your shoe prepped, your foot prepped, your shoe prepped, and have everything shaped first before you start making your hospital plate. So for the sake of this project, this fits our foot. We've done all our shaping first, okay? We can now use our shoe as a template to whatever we're going to be tracing to. I'm going to use a couple little guides on here. I would like to know where the widest part of my foot is. So I'm going to mark that on my shoe. And in this case, I just used the 5th nail hole right above it and drew a line on both sides so that when I transfer that line onto my plate, I can also draw a line across it and have a couple reference points. And this is where I'm going to mark my widest part of the foot on both sides. Now I'm going to use a straight edge and just connect my 2 dots here from the widest part of my foot on both sides. We're going to cut this out. We're going to cut out other pieces too to help it be a leverage reduction plate. But first we're just going to remove the excess material to just get started. I'm going to start out using a jigsaw to show you that you can just use a jigsaw to do this project, and then I'm also going to use a bandsaw. One of the things that I've learned with using aluminum is that it can gum up your grinding bouts or your blades, so you want to use a little bit more of a coarser blade. Carbide is ideal, but just a coarse or medium wood finish will work well. Okay. Another thing you can use to help it from gumming up is beeswax. And so when it's running, just letting it slide up and down on the sides and a little bit to its teeth, and it'll work way more efficiently when you start cutting the aluminum. I'm going to do a couple little relief cuts in here just so when I'm going around, the metal's going to fall off and I'll be able to follow the contour here. So you'll notice that I kept it a little bit on the coarse side, and that'll be fine. It gives us a little extra material to work with. So the next part of our process here is we're going to cut part of the hospital plate down to fit the inner rim of the shoe here. So it's going to fit on the inner rim of the fillering on both sides. We're going to leave a portion for our heels and leave a portion for our toe so we can attach it. So first thing I'm going to do is line up my widest part of my shoe on both sides and trace the inside of my shoe. I'm going to mark where my fillering ends on both sides. Once again, to give me a landmark. Okay. So we're going to preserve the heel and the heel. We're going to remove this outer portion where the nails would go, and we're going to leave a portion of our toe. Okay? A template that would help me find the inner rim of each side would get a smaller shoe and maybe even just shape it to fit that. So this is a little bit big. I'm going to just narrow it a little to give me a template. Here we go. I like it. I'm going to use the same mark, my widest part of my foot, transfer it over to my shoe. Right? So now that I have marked the widest part of my foot and widest part of my shoe to my smaller shoe, I can then transfer it onto here, line it up, evenly space it. All right. So this portion right here is going to get, I'm going to use a drill, and drilling this hole is going to allow me to just to have a clean transition from where my cuts come in, and the parts will fall out a little bit easier. So with all these lines here, it can be a little bit confusing. What's leaving? What are we taking off? We're going to remove this area right here and this area right here. When we're trimming feet, trimming is purely a subtractive process, and once we remove that foot, it's hard to put it back on. And same as the plate, I realized maybe I'm going to want a little more material here, and I can always come back and cut more off. So I decided I'm going to leave it a little rich, see how it fits, and then if I need to trim off more, I will. So these two holes, what those two holes help us do is now when I'm coming in with my jigsaw, I don't have to try to do a sharp 90-degree bend. It's already done for me. So now we can soften some of our edges with a grinder, remove a little bit more when needed, and soften the sharp edges here and true this up a little bit with the grinder. There it is for the moment. We're going to use the two little center punches that we have in the back of the shoe for drilling and tapping, and then we're just going to do an extra punch here at the toe, closer to the back here of our rim, inner rim. Next step is use the corresponding drill bit that will fit with your tap. And we're going to drill all three of our holes with that. So how do you line up these holes with this hole and have them all line up perfectly? Well, we're going to do it one step at a time. We're going to start at the toe. And we can use this transfer punch here to mark our little dot. So once we have it lined up, you can kind of just pinch it with your fingers, make sure it's not moving. And we have now transferred a dot to the center of our hole. All right. So this screw will not fit through our plate yet. We don't want to enlarge this hole because we need to drill and tap it, but this one we need to enlarge it so the screw will fit through. I have the 1/4-inch drill bit here. I can just widen it. Now my screw fits through it. We can countersink it at a later date. So once I drill and tap this, this is going to act as my first clamp to then help me line up my second screws. There are multiple tools for tapping. I think if you've never done it before, it's best to start with your hands and get to learn the feel of it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use some cutting fluid. And sometimes when you come right in, your tap can be crooked in different ways. So you want to make sure that you're starting it slowly and line it up with that hole there. So you're going to start doing tiny little bites. You'll feel it bind, undo, bind, undo. And as it starts to go through the full thickness of your material, the tapping will become easier. So you'll notice now that I am doing full rotations, and it gets pretty easy. But at the very beginning, I don't try force it. Ask me how many taps I've broken. And once you've broken a few, you'll find your limit. When a screw is going to be used multiple times to help it from getting cross-threaded, it's nice to give it a nice countersink here so the screw can easily find where it belongs. There you go. So this screw now acts as a clamp. I can now come back through and transfer with my transfer punch to both sides. So the temptation of doing both of them at the same time is there. I recommend doing one at a time, simply so the slightest movement in when you're moving this back and forth could happen, and then your holes won't line up. So just do one at a time. There we go. All right. So now I'll go ahead and enlarge my hole in my hospital plate for the screw. And then we can transfer over for our last hole. So that is our process for aligning 3 holes that line up perfectly. Now we're going to have a little fabricating where we're going to mold the front of the shoe and the pad to create our early breakover, and then soften all our edges on our shoe before we put it on the horse's foot. And before I put this back on, I'm going to countersink my hospital plate. So it's a little rich on this side. We can go back to our grinder, soften all our edges, remove any excess material, make any final adjustments that we need. Be aware that depending on your length of screw, you may need to shorten them before you go ahead and put it on the horse. So you can use your grinder. So I'm a little rich on this side, so I'm going to just true it up. I can just kind of eyeball it. This side I'm fine. And take it off, and we'll be ready to nail it onto a horse. So we have created a shoe that has medial lateral leverage reduction, a little early breakover. We do not have anything supporting the back of the frog. If you have a great big healthy frog, maybe you don't need to add anything. Maybe you don't have a healthy frog, so we need to add something in here to stop material falling out the back. I'll show you how to fix that. So on this hospital plate package, we have a bar that's been welded into the back of the shoe. This bar helps material from falling out the back of the horse's foot. In this particular package, we do not have a bar, and that isn't necessarily a problem. Maybe you have a really healthy frog that will meet this hospital plate. And in the case that you do not have a healthy frog, one of the ways that you could resolve this is by filling the back of the horse's foot with dental impression material. And impression material is a 50-50 two-part putty that you want to have equal portions of. And in this particular case, pink is the medium hardness. You have about so you would be able to mold this putty impression material to the back of the horse's foot. You could shape it in the shape of a frog. You would be able to shape it in whatever way you need it to be. Like so. This would be one way of helping material stay inside the horse's foot. Often this area here will be filled with medicated packing or dressing of some sort. Another solution could be using something more permanent that you would attach to the hospital plate. So we could use a double nail pad and screw it to our hospital plate. So what we would do is we would use our shoe as a template. I'm going to use both the holes to help line up my straight edge. So we can cut out this piece of material. So we now have a bar, if you will, that will fit the back portion of the shoe, and we're going to attach it to our hospital plate. When deciding what drill bit size you want to use, this is where a drill bit gauge comes in really handy. So I want an 1/8 inch drill bit to drill my holes through my hospital plate. So just scored the back of my bar. Now I can see where I want to put my holes. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to do it like that. I'm going to countersink so my sheetrock screws can sink in there nice. So my screws are a little long, we just grind them off. If you are choosing to use a piece of steel and make a weld in a bar, very similar process. We're going to cut off a piece of steel that'll slide in between our two heels. It's okay if it fits a little bit loose. I'm going to go ahead and scarf or put a bevel on the sides of each side of the steel so that when you go to weld it, your material that you're welding has a couple places for it to fall into. So we have prepared our bar stock that's ready to be welded, and that's what it can look like. And here is one that has already been cut to finish, little different option. It's been welded in, and we drilled and tapped the bar. Yeah. And the process is the same. You starting with your toe. Really, you can start at any one. I like starting at my whole toe, clamping it in, and doing each one at a time. That way, everything lines up when you're finished.